all of you. Welcome to everybody. We're really glad you're here. One of the pieces of the work that I really love here at the Y are the many ways in which we become a place where we bring people together. And that's often a campus and community connection. So whether you're from the campus or you're not from the campus, we're super glad you're here today. We have that sort of connection expressed here in our pair of speakers this afternoon, and so we're really excited to have them here with us. I will be really brief. Sometimes we get speakers whose work speaks for themselves. So I do not have long bios on either Minnie or Thom, largely because they are known entities here. Lots of us know them and we know them for their work. But I will do very brief introductions here. Minnie Pearson, as we know, is the president of the NAACP Champaign County Branch. She has lived here in the Champaign-Urbana community for over 50 years, is a graduate of the University of Illinois, of course. She is a public servant by nature. She's a lifelong member of both the NAACP and the Delta Sigma Theta sorority. She serves in leadership roles in several other area organizations and is a member of the Salem Baptist Church in Champaign. Dr. Thom Moore is a community psychologist. He's retired from the Department of Psychology here at the University of Illinois. Thom is known in many circles for his commitment to community and to a variety of important justice issues. Thom is a former member of the Board of Governors here at the University YMCA, which is something that we're proud of, and he's an active member of the First Mennonite Church in Urbana. So, welcome to you both. We're very glad you're here. I think Minnie is going to start us off today.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I have a teacher voice, okay, because I'm a retired teacher as well, so remind me to kind of push this back a little bit. But good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you this evening, this afternoon, and thank you for the introduction. Yes, I am a public servant by heart. I was the oldest child of 14 children, and I always had to take charge, so that's where it came from. And whenever I wanted to know something, because I was born and raised in Greenville, Mississippi, where children were seen and not heard at that particular time. And so in order to find out what your parents were talking about and what was important and happening in and out of the state and the community, I would dust the furniture and listen every time. So I knew all of the things that was happening. And I didn't come by the NAACP by accident. It was introduced to me by my father, who was born and raised in Mississippi as well. And so on a Thursday night, he would come home early from work and he would get dressed up, and I knew, there was no church or any activities. So one day I asked him, I said, Daddy, I said, where, you don't question your daddy, but I got up enough nerve. I said, Daddy, where are you going? I mean, why are you dressed up? He said, I'm going to my necessary meeting. And so I thought that was a meeting that he was going to, and I didn't question him. It meant something to him, and apparently my mother knew something about it as well. So it wasn't until I was about to graduate from high school that I learned that his necessary meeting was the NAACP. And he did not publicize that because in the job that he held in Mississippi, he could have lost his job or gotten hurt really bad. So a lot of things he did not let us children know. So when I came to Champaign, and I'm not going to keep you very long on this story, when I came to Champaign and I ran into a couple of things that I could not handle due to racism, I made my way to a phone booth and I called my dad and told him what had happened. And he said, look, he said, have you tried to reach out to the NAACP, the Urban League, or anyone? And of course I said no. He said, well, you should do that. There should be people that will help you to navigate through some issues like this. But I went on because I'm grown. I just graduated from high school and I'm coming to the north and I'm free to do what I want to do. I'm not in Mississippi anymore, so I just was trying a lot of different things. But I soon learned that there were things that was not safe for me to do. So I ended up calling him again. He reminded me to get in touch with the NAACP, and that's what I did. Never thinking that one day or over 40 years later, that I would be the president of the NAACP, which I'm very, very proud of. The mission statement of the NAACP. The NAACP Champaign County Branch serves the people of Champaign County. Our primary focus is to provide programs and services to promote and enhance civil and equal rights, political empowerment, educational excellence, economic development, and outreach, health, youth, and the Champaign County Branch strives to ensure equal access to all rights, privileges, and resources that contribute to the equality of life for the people it serves. The strength of our branch lies with the history of the organization and its membership. Membership drives our organization. The Champaign County Branch is committed to building an organization that is trusted, respected, and considered effective resources for the Champaign County community. The overall goal of the branch is to improve the quality of life for the people it serves. And as president of the NAACP Champaign County Branch, we are local. And you know that most things that go into law start at the local level. And that's where the strongest things are. That's where the people who are determined to see change, this is where they're located. And so we, the NAACP Champaign County Branch, is a working board. We actually do the work. And we're volunteers and we do not get paid for what we do. Our meetings are held the first Thursday of every month. And we used to do it at the Champaign Public Library, but now we are doing it over Zoom because we're not going to let anything prohibit us from meeting and doing the work that we need to do in this community. So we will find a way, even if we have to do it in the park someplace, we will do it. Our first meeting is, we have 2 meetings every Thursday. It's the executive committee. And in our executive committee is where the administration takes place. All of our administrative business takes place there. This is a business meeting, and it's a branch of officers and committee chairs. And that makes up our executive committee. We make decisions that we also carry back to our general body. So we don't just make them and it becomes what we want to do. We always share that with our general body. And that means the members of the NAACP. What I'm most proud of is that a lot of people think that the NAACP is just for black people or people of color. No. Under my leadership and with the agreement of the executive committee, we have opened up our NAACP Champaign County Branch to anyone who wants to help in the work that needs to be done in this community. So I am proud to say that many of our members are here today, and they do not look like me, but they are just as knowledgeable and just as helpful, and they have it together, and I'm so very proud to have them serve with us. They know when to do it, what to do, and they are taking charge in doing it. In fact, they are part of the community partners that we partner with to get things done. So after our executive committee, that we're having virtual. I am the only speaker for the NAACP. The president is the speaker. Not that when I say mine, I'm done because it's not mine. Not that the executive committee doesn't take charge in committees. It is that the president, it falls back on the president. Whatever happens or doesn't happen, it comes back to me. So I would rather be accountable for my words that are coming out of my mouth than to have to justify the words that are coming out of someone else's mouth. That's it. So anyway, but I'm very proud and people are very, very helpful. I'm a deputy registrar and of course I take voting very seriously. We always encourage people to get out and vote. We are a nonpartisan organization. We do not tell you who to vote for or how to vote or any of that, but we strongly encourage you to get out and vote and get everybody else registered to vote. We have participated in voter registration by motorcade, building billboards out in the community, radio, poll watching, flyers. Legal women voters have been a very big help. Those are some go-getters, you hear me? They are working, they really are. And yes, give them a hand. We have worked with Bend the Arc, and we have speakers, and because we have our meetings over Zoom, and we can't get out to reach people oftentimes, let it be known, Minnie will find you and bring you in and have you come and speak to our board. No, we're not a board, I keep saying that. Our committee over Zoom. That is to keep us thoroughly informed as to what's going on in our community, as well as we are partnering with all community partners. Anybody who's out there working, we are willing to do that. We have also visited high schools and made sure that our young people, when they turn a certain age, they are registered to vote. I do a lot of walking around on registration day, on voting day, to make sure things are going well. And so far, Champaign is pretty good. We don't have some of the issues that other people have. Now, where things take place in our community and in our meetings is at our general body meeting, and that starts at 7:15. Our regular executive committee at 6, so we give it a chance over Zoom, and then we have our general body. And like I said, we always have our guest speakers to come in and speak to us and keep us informed. People from the school districts, from the city, from different aspects of life, healthcare. Julie Pride has been a regular. We have really leaned on her pretty heavily during this pandemic. And she is little dynamite. She will come no matter what. She was always there. So we have had a number of speakers come and talk to us and keep us informed. In fact, we have, the NAACP took a grant, a Navigator grant, which gave us the money and the resources that we needed to address the vaccine, dispel the myths, educate people on, and they're grown people. And we had to convince, but it was worth it to make sure that we got shots and arms. We also handled food insecurities, medicines, grocery shopping, taking things to homes, people who are quarantined, we took care of them, and we had people working for us, and we hit the ground and we served Champaign County. Not just the inner city or just people of color, we went all out to the surrounding town, to the point where one day we went by twos. A little boy came to the door when we were delivering groceries to his parents. He came and he looked out and he says, Mom, there's a nigger at the door. Well, in a normal situation, that would have been a teachable moment, but that was not the time. And so she said to him, boy, I told you not to say that. Well, the child got it from someplace. So we need to educate. There's always need for education in that sense. As the executive committee, we have our committee work, and we ask each committee to bring their written report or send it in ahead of time so people can look it over and be willing to give them some feedback, or we can vote on it. We have our AXO program, which is our youth program, and it is, AXO stands for Afro-Academic, Cultural, Technological, and Scientific Olympics. And that is headed by our own Dr. Barbara Gillespie. I don't think she's here today, but she is really good at what she does. She is someone that you should get to know if you do not know her. And then we have our education committee, and I am so very proud. You probably say, Minnie, you're proud of everything. Well, I am. I'm proud of workers. I am. We have Dr. Barbara Stubbs Mason, who was born and raised here in Champaign and went to school here and went on to do. she's still doing great stuff. She's still doing good. And so she's here. Would you please stand? She just got here. And give her a hand, please. She's been a principal, a superintendent, a teacher, music, and she's done it all. And her mother was the principal at Booker T. Washington School for over 30 years. Yes, over 30 years. So you can see where she got her drive and her educational things for her. We have Dr. Joycelyn Landon Brown. Stand up, Joycelyn. And she handles the Urbana schools, and Dr. Suggs Mason takes care of the Champaign schools. So we want to have representation in every place. The NAACP is there at the table. If you're going to make decisions, if you're going to be part of it, you need to be at the table in order to make that happen. You have to be there. And so we also service Rantoul. We have not done it as well as we've done Urbana and Champaign, but we are working on it. We have a membership committee, which is doing a wonderful job of keeping our membership, because membership does drive the organization, and it is good to have as many as possible. That's what gives us our credibility in this community, is people can go out word of mouth and tell people what we're doing when they cannot see what we're doing. Then we have our political action committee, and that is Artist James, our treasurer, and Ben Dupree. Now, I know Artist is here. Artist, would you please stand? Artist and I and others are life members of the NAACP. I'm a life member. And so thank you for what you do also. Criminal justice, you will hear from him a little later. And he's dynamite. He really is. And many of the things that you will hear him talk about is the NAACP Champaign County Branch commits itself to addressing the challenging work with the partners in Urbana, the mayor in each city, work to transforming our broken criminal justice system and to advocate for smarter, results-based criminal justice policies and keep our community safe, which keeps our community safe, including equal, fair treatment for all of its citizens and to racial justice disparities at all levels of the system, and we do it at the local level. So that's good. We have our Veterans Affairs, because we cannot forget about the veterans. They have served this country well, and we don't ever want to be accused of neglecting people who deserve it, regardless. And that includes trauma, insecurities, housing, whatever they need. We, as a community, need to make sure that those people get what they need. Because after all, they gave up a lot for us. And many of them, serving in the military, had to come home and not be respected themselves in their own country. So you know that's a problem. That is a problem. Then we have our communications people, which is takes care of our website and keeps us going and keeps us up and makes flyers and just keep things current as much as we possibly can, because did I say we are volunteers? We don't get paid. We do the very, very best that we can. Community Coalition, Champaign City Council, the mayors, the police departments. The NAACP has been working with not only the University of Illinois Police Department, which we are proud to say we got them to sign on to the 10 shared principles. And that's the card that you see right there. That is to build trust between the police and the community. Trust is a huge, huge thing. Once it's broken, it takes a lot of work to get it back. And that's what we are in the process of doing. So part of that was to respect everybody. All lives matter, but at one particular time, it was us that were being killed. So we needed to talk about those things. Talking brings about healing. And knowledge of each other's lived experiences really does help. And I'm keeping track of the time. So this is the 10 shared principles. And then we have our healthcare. Healthcare is a huge thing. We encouraged the COVID-19 vaccines, assisted with medication pickups and deliveries, arranged a visit to clients and took them to doctors, connected with the clients, see what resources they needed, and also provided answers to people who were homeless. We provided educational, social distancing when they were quarantined, and made sure that they had all of the things that they needed, including their children, no matter where they lived. We went to some places you say now they are sundown towns. We were there. We went there. They couldn't believe when they looked out and saw our brown and black faces. We encouraged the clients to stay home and wear masks. We did sanitizer. We provided all of the protections that they needed. And we were there to take their phone calls, and we put in weekends and quite a bit that was needed. So we did the research. We worked closely with Julie Pride, and like I said, she kept us right on top. In fact, I was one of the ones that did not believe in the vaccine at first. And I wasn't going to get it. I said, I remember what? The Tuskegee, I remember what happened. I'm not taking that. Somebody said they put that in your arms and you will never be able to speak a word again. All kinds of things are going on out there. But not only did I have to, as a leader, set examples, I got out there and I went and we videoed it. And I prayed all night. I did. I prayed all night, Lord. You know I'm going to take this vaccine tomorrow. Now, you got to protect me. You got to do this. And so I went. My daughter went with me. She videoed it. They put it in. I looked around. I said, when are you going to do it? She said, we finished. I said, wow. And I stuck my chest out. I said, I did that. I did it. So it was nice to put it on Facebook, put it on social media so people can see that if I didn't grow 2 heads, you would be all right. You would be fine. So we talked about all of the education of that. So that went really well. In our executive committee meetings, we talk about what is best for the community coalitions. We got also Champaign, were one of the first city council and police departments to sign the 10 shared principles. We went to Springfield. And when Anthony Cobb and myself got back from Springfield, we went over to Centennial and Central. No, we didn't go. Centennial. And we talked to every student over there about driving safely, because we mostly had their driver's ed classes. Driving safely and how to see the police not in such a negative way. And so we did a lot of role playing and talking, and when we went in, some of the kids booed. And that's okay. That's an expression. That's okay to boo. And he said, when I was your age and somebody said, a police came to me and said anything, he said, I would have turned my back and walked away from him. So booing is okay. But after we had talked and had videos and scenarios and allowed them to express themselves and to say what they felt and not judge them, when only one pamphlet was left when we left, it went in their back pockets. They understood a lot better. And one little boy, he said, I noticed that in the video, Ms. Pearson, he said that all of the victims, the people that police are arresting are black. And we talked about that as well. We talked about who produced this video and how did that make them feel? And let's do better. Let's get out there and word of mouth and show what we can do. We have a lot of responsibilities, and we also include people to have, we encourage people to have responsibilities as well. So the NAACP Champaign County Branch is doing a wonderful job of addressing the issues in this community. We got a banner to sign on to the 10 shared principles, and we also got Sheriff Herman from the county to sign on. So we did, along with the ACLU, we worked very closely with the NAACP. That's another group. I'm telling you, just get them hand. They really work. They really work to help us to get the word out. We did a youth force policy revision. We got it just the way we want. Now I see that she serves in Urbana, is retired. I told him, I said, now look, we worked really hard to get you where you are. Now all of a sudden you're going to just walk out. You're a quitter. But I understand why he had to go. I understand that. And so today is his reception, and that's a thing where the NAACP and the police, come on, that's never happened. I mean, we are making some inroads. All you need to do is communicate and work with one another. You have to deal just a little bit, but you're doing it for the good of your community. And so making them understand that all lives matter. Yes, all lives matter. But when you see things that are happening at that particular time, it started with Alea Lewis for me. That was hard to see. A young woman slammed to the ground. And I needed to share with him my lived experiences growing up in Mississippi, one of the poorest states in the United States. Hopefully it'll get better, but it's there. I went to an all-black elementary school, all-black middle school, all-black high school, come into Champaign and saw you guys. I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? But you'll be surprised at how much people who did not look like me pitched in to help me. And that is not what I saw on our one little black and white TV that was in the living room when we were looking at the civil rights movement and people were using dog poses and all of those things. And I said, Mama, are those white people out there marching with us, helping us? And she said to me, with tears in her eyes, she said, there's good and bad in every race. And thinking back, the NAACP, the inception of the NAACP was all run by a white woman. Other people have put their lives on the line as well. But it is still very much needed for us to step up when we see something that is not right. And if it doesn't make you feel right. Now, I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty for having white privilege, but you got to fight for what is right for us too. You got to do that. That if you sit and do nothing, then you're part of the problem. Do something. Do something. Say something. Speak up. Speak up. And so I'm not going to keep you much longer. I'm going to yield to my friend, Thomas. He doesn't want me to call him doctor. I won't call him. He is coming up now to talk with you. And we will stop in time to have questions and answers. Hopefully we'll give you the answers. If not, I'm not above saying I don't know the answer to that. I'll get back with you. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. And I hope that you learned something that was told to me probably about 6 months ago when I was going to speak at another event, and I came in and I told them who I was, and this man looked at me and he said, the NAACP president, that's a job for a man. and especially, he said, you're a woman. I said, bless your little heart. What comes out of the mouths of people. Sometimes it's not even worth you addressing it. You know, you just got to walk away from it and leave it alone and let them come to their conclusion. So thank you so much again. And I bring you the dynamic Thom.
Clip this. Awesome. Thank you. And then if you want to put this in your pocket.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. And Minnie, thank you for that run-through of the NAACP. You know, before we get started, I think I need to change what I was hoping to say. The title of what I want to say is Social Justice and Equality, the Golden Ring. The work of the NAACP and other social justice agencies has evolved from the 19th century abolitionist freedom movements to the 20th century freedom and civil rights movement into the social justice equality work of today. Although these movements overlapped with each other, what they demonstrate is that racism is deep in our society, and we can never relax because the opposing forces are always ready to swoop in and claim that the prize has been won. I want to draw on a Chris Talgon essay and an editorial by Kermit Robinson III, which appeared in Time magazine a year ago, to make my point. I intend to take less than 15 minutes or so to identify goals for discussion and actions and address the future of race relations in the nation. I want to make the point that we must persist and be active in this fight. In a recent search on the work of the U.S. Massachusetts Representative Ayanna Soyinai Presley, I came across a 2021 essay in The American Thinker by Chris Talga entitled, "Ayanna Presley is Wrong About America." The title, of course, caught my attention, so I read it. I was not surprised by his take on Representative Priestley, but I was reminded of just how difficult the fight for racial social justice and equality is. Criminal justice reform is among the many issues that Representative Priestley advocated for. Mr. Talcott holds that she reduces that and all other issues she backs to race. Priestley introduced a resolution in 2019, the People's Justice Guarantee. It is described on her website as a comprehensive resolution devoted to dismantling the injustices within the criminal legal system so that it is smaller, safer, less punitive, and more humane. Talgo, critical of all of Priestley's positions, not just the criminal justice reforms one, considers her among those misguided liberals who deny the gains America has made toward the racial and social injustice. Kermit Robinson is a professor of constitutional law at the University of Pennsylvania. His editorial was entitled, "How Martin Luther King Jr. Changed His Mind About America." In his editorial, Robinson outlines the evolution of Dr. King's thinking from his 1963 I Have a Dream speech to his Other America speech of 1967. It is these two speeches, King clarifies the differences between the Founders' Constitution and the Reconstruction Constitution. While the Founders' Constitution places the source of the fundamental ideas of the nation in the Declaration of Independence, King came to believe that it was the Reconstruction Constitution with a focus on the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that ushered in the ideal of equality. Robinson says that the Founders' Constitution tells us that the Declaration of Independence ideas can coexist with the white supremacy. He says the truth is that the founding America was not a nation dedicated to our idea of equality. The Betsy Ross flag shows us 13 stars in a circle, and every star represents a state where slavery was legal. White supremacy does not equal equality. But back to Talcott. He says in 2021, America leftist leaders and the mainstream liberal media somehow tie almost anything and everything to racism. Referencing Representative Priestley's website, he says, here are a few of Priestley's recent tweets regarding racism. Policing is a public health crisis. Mass incarceration is a public health crisis. Housing injustice is a public health crisis. Medical apartheid is a public health crisis. Racism is a public health crisis. He continues, although I disagree with Priestley's view on the state of modern race relations in the United States, I do rejoice in the doctrine espoused by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Quoting Dr. King, a figure that the majority of conservatives disliked when he was alive, Talcott said, "Lest we forget," Dr. King said, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." He reminds us that MLK uttered those famous words in 1963 during a time when Jim Crow actually existed, or at least was legal, and blacks were treated as second-class citizens under the law. Further on, he says, "I think he," that is Dr. King, "would be proud of how far we have come in bridging the racial divide." As evidence of how far we have come, he then cites from the United States Census Bureau the increase in interracial marriages. The increase of interracial marriages went from 0.4% of all marriages in 1960 to 2.9% of all marriages in 1990. You know what? That's a smokescreen. That's a distraction, and that's a mask. Only a fool would say that racially the nation has not made progress, but interracial marriages has not wiped out racism or the continuing practice of it, nor is it a barometer of the journey. Actually, it may not matter. The correct measure is racial disparities of Representative Priestley's concern. Interracial marriages are worth considering as a gain if they lead to fewer black men being accused and lynched for approaching a white woman. After all, it was just 1967 when the Supreme Court said that the Virginia law forbidding miscegenation was declared unconstitutional because it violated the 14th Amendment. And yes, black people of my age remember Emmett Till. On Tuesday, President Biden signed the Emmett Till anti-lynching Act into law. Although long overdue, that topped interracial marriages. And as of March 23rd, 2022, there's a senator from Indiana who thinks that interracial marriage is a states' rights issue. It never should have been legalized nationally. Talgo's conclusion, there are scores of other statistics, he doesn't pick any of them though, one can cite in providing that America is far less racist today than it was decades ago. We did twice elect a black man to the American presidency, as well as a black woman more recently to the vice presidency. We? Come on. Yet all the monumental progress seems completely lost on so many aggrieved leftists such as Ariana Priestley. Yes, there are more minority elected officials, more deserving athletes and entertainers, more educators, more medical doctors, more people reaching their potential, as well as there is continued suffering under the heel of racial injustice and oppression. In spite of this monumental progress, a 2020 Pew survey that followed months of racial justice protests in the U.S. reported 70% of Democrats said it is a lot more difficult to be a black person than to be a white person in the United States today. That's up from 53% who said that the same thing just 4 years earlier. Republican attitudes on the same questions changed little during that span, with only a small share agreeing with the Democratic view. Dr. King gave his Other America speech on April 14, 1967 at Stanford University, and again on March 14, 1968 at Grosse Pointe South High School. He poetically painted the images of two Americas, one overflowing with the miracle of prosperity and the honey of opportunity with material necessities, culture, education, and most of all, freedom. The other America has a daily ugliness that transforms hope into despair. The American Negro finds himself living in a triple ghetto, one of race, one of poverty, and another of human misery. At this point of the civil rights struggle, despite the gains that have been made, he said that it was easier to integrate public facilities than to achieve genuine equality. The prize is measured by discrepancies in social justice, education, criminal justice, employment, living wages, health care, levels of wealth, home ownership, and above all, voting rights. Is this a shift from his I have a dream position? No. It's an extension and expansion of it. Genuine equality is dependent on the dream as the dream is dependent on genuine equality. This equality vision of the dream came to him through his work in Chicago. He found that many of the civil rights supporters, mostly Northerners, who were appalled at the extreme behavior of white Southerners, were unwilling to engage in and render that same support of genuine equality. It might seem that the view of America from 58 years ago is outdated. However, some of the struggles from then are still present today. Robinson says, white conservatives liked King's dream speech because it does not require that they do anything differently. It does not address equality. Talgo is the bright light to remind us that the narrative and the agenda for racial social justice and equality must not be allowed to be hijacked. We must keep our eyes on the prize because there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So I'm behind you and I'm asking you a question.
To get rid of them, you can also just hit like
I wonder if you
survive.
could talk a little bit about the Illinois report card and the disparities in the Champaign and Urbana schools, the education gap. Because I know that the NAACP just gave a letter to the school board.
I'm going to suggest, this is awkward, but I'm going to suggest, for the sake of being able to be seen on the Zoom, that you guys both stand up front while we do questions, if that's okay. I think it'll just be easier for folks to see.
Would you repeat your question, please? I'm sorry.
That's all right. Oh, you turned it back on. So I know the NAACP just gave a letter to the school board, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the Illinois report card and the disparities that are seen in the education gap in the schools.
Yes. Because we are working closely and watching the school board and the teachers' unions, I know that teachers are, let's just be real, undervalued and underpaid. And with the pandemic, it really brought out a lot of disparities of how that system is broken. And from year to year, I have watched that system move furniture around, move things around, programs, implement this, implement that, but nothing changes. Our children are suffering because of the lack of teaching. And so we want to look at accountability. It is atrocious the way our students are underperforming. Even in the early grades, somebody somewhere dropped the ball. Because if you don't get it between kindergarten and third grade, that's a pipeline. You need that, and somebody needs to be held accountable. I've always heard that if the teachers are not teaching, the students are not learning, or vice versa. If the students are not learning, the teachers are not teaching. And I understand about trauma. I understand about being poor. I understand I came from a poor family. But it was important that we get an education. And we had teachers who cared, who built in us and instilled in us that we could do it. They had high expectations. We felt like we belonged there, and they had our best interests at heart. And somehow, this is missing. So instead of moving furniture around and implementing programs and saying this and that and other, let's think about how these children, how we're failing our children. Okay, now we come to an agreement, a tentative agreement. Hopefully they'll get that done and sign it. But what I said in my article is holding everyone accountable. Everyone accountable, including teacher to teacher, teacher to student, teacher to parents. The whole bit come together and let's give our children who are underperforming the gift, give them a gift of extra curricular, extra instruction time to learn, and to put your strongest teachers where there is the greatest need. Start in early childhood. I understand also that a lot of the teachers are not trained in diversity and racial equality. That is a job for the school district to educate. Also, we talked about going to historical black colleges and doing recruiting, getting more males. And it is a proven fact that children do better when they see people in the district or in their building who looks like them. Think about, this looks bad. I was a University of Illinois person coming for a job here, and I had children. It would throw me off the rails to know that I had to enroll my child in a district where children are underperforming like they are, and it's not the children's fault. And we don't want to continue to blame parents. And I did say something about someone's slide. The children who can and their families have privileges, and the ones that do not. Children learn differently. Some are visual learners, some can get it. But whatever it is, encourage them to be who they can be and prepare them for the future. Because if it doesn't, you don't. It's going to come back on all of us because we live in this community.
Thank you. I agree with you, and everyone should take responsibility. And I agree with you, a teacher needs to teach, and the students need to learn. I'm impressed by what you said, and you wanted the teacher to give extra teaching. But I do not understand when the school board introduced to increase the hours of the teachers. What's the argument about? Why the whole teacher union also offset, threatened to strike, and it's not, they are not paid. They are, according to the proposal, they would be increased teaching hours, but they are compensated. And so I just don't know, I'm not in the school field, so I just as a committee member, I would like to know from you guys what's the whole argument about.
You want me to?
If you don't mind, thank you so much for that question. Because you are not alone. There were a lot of people in this community who did not understand, because the word that did not get out the way it should have. I'm going to ask my education chair, Dr. Suggs Mason, to come up and say just a few words about that, but let me say this. they're under a lot of pressure right now. They were working without a contract. They were looking after their needs. But what is going on with our children, and especially black and brown children, goes back a long time ago. They were neglected. In fact, I have heard from people who are enrolled here at this University of Illinois. They come here very bright and energetic and ready to learn, but if they don't feel like they are a part or they are wanted, children don't articulate like we do. They act it out. And some of the students were saying, I'm bright enough, I'm hanging in there, but I don't feel like they want us at the University of Illinois. Well, I told them, if you're at this university and you are bright enough to get here, then this is where you belong. Just because it's hard doesn't mean you give up. There's always going to be a struggle. But to get back to your question, if they had laid out a plan that was clear to both the parents and the community of what they were doing, somebody got ahead of themselves from the union and let it leak out before it should have. And there's so many voices out there, so much noise going on. With those voices, you don't know who to believe. So it should have been made perfectly clear. But I will never back down and say, and not say, that teachers have a job to do. When you make up your mind that you're going in education, you teach. It's been done and it's been proven that we have very bright children. But if I don't feel wanted and cared for, I'm not going to perform. But if someone shows me that they expect it, I know you can do it, I have done it. I'm a retired teacher. I was not only dealing with the system, I was dealing with racism within my own building. But I was bound and determined when those students left my classroom, they would be at or above grade level. And I did that by, at the beginning of the school, rather than to start pulling out a book trying to test what they didn't know. I took 2 weeks or so to bond and build a relationship and let them know that I know that they could perform. And these are some of the ingredients that is missing from our school district. Teachers deserve to have. But another thing is, our children deserve that extra time, especially, and then you don't have to have all children in that program, only the ones that actually need it. And then the district should provide bus service or whatever service it takes, and pay the teachers, not to have them do it for nothing, pay them, and recruit extra teachers for help. So it's a big, huge program. I mean, it's a big, huge problem. I don't have all of the answers, but I do know as a teacher, I would lay awake at night and say, okay, now Johnny didn't know how to do this, and I did this and I did. I'm going to find out how in the world can I get Johnny to get this. And then I would get Johnny's mom and daddy involved. I said, what are we going to do with Johnny? It was a partnership between the teacher and the parents and the student. And I had friends, baby. Them parents would come out for me because I built a trust and a bond with them. And so some of those things are missing. We all have to work together. And I sat down and wrote this. And it's not easy for me to write things these days because my eyes are not what they used to be. But I had to make them understand that this is what is needed. This is what is needed. If you care about children, you will do it. Sometimes you'll do it without getting paid. I would go to the building on weekends and get things ready for my learners, and I've met them where they are. All children do not learn the same. And so you have to find out where they are, and you have to deal with that.
I want to say something. Real quickly, I don't know how many of you remember that in the 90s, Champaign was under
Consent decree.
a consent decree with, and the courts monitored what we were doing. And it was based on discrimination that occurred in our school. one of the things I think you have to remember is, aside from the teacher, there's a bunch of structural things that make it difficult for young African American kids to do well. When I was on the school board, I remember that it was not uncommon that 70% of the suspensions in the school were African American kids. And there were other ways that kids just were not in the classroom. It's very difficult, I don't care how good a teacher you are, it's very difficult to do well with a kid when they're not there. And we also, African American kids were also more likely to be expelled from school than their white counterparts. These are pretty important structural things that need to be, and were addressed at that time. My concern is how do we slip back? There's one kind of rule of thumb that I was aware of, that is, anything that proves that kids are doing well, black kids are always at the bottom of that list. Anything that's a behavioral problem, black kids are always at the top. You can go through whatever you want to with schools, and you'll find that repeats itself throughout the nation. So there's a switch that says black kids cannot and should not perform as well as white kids. One last thing to say is that some of that structural changes, when black kids seem to do well, white parents show up at the school board and protest. When it had to do with gifted learning and we said we're going to put more black kids in it, they had a fit. And don't you know, they came with a plan already laid out and said, you can't change gifted education. They thought it was their own public or private purpose. So a bunch of our kids don't do well because of the structural existence in our schools.
Give him a hand. Dr. Stokes Mason.
Well, there's really not a lot that I can add to what they said. I can tell you that in Champaign, and as someone who grew up here and went through Champaign School, that in the latest report for academic achievement, African Americans are, as Mr. Moore said, at the bottom. In math, on the state mandated test, only 3%, I'm going to say that again, only 3% met or exceeded, and I don't think any exceeded the standard. Even at the state level for African American children, it was 12%. And in reading, it was only 6%. The community should be up in arms. This is going to affect us for no other reason, economically, socially. It increases the type of violence that we're seeing in the community. If we do not address the inequities in funding and resources that are given to African American children, I agree with you, Mr. Moore. I taught in the gifted program here in Unit 4 for a short time. My mother was a gifted teacher here. I reinstituted the gifted program in my school district in the south suburbs of Chicago, which was 90% African American. Because not only do we have to address those students who are below standards, but we need to address those who are at standard or ready to move above. Their needs also need to be addressed. So I see that the community has been relatively quiet, except for the ACLU, the NAACP, and a few individuals in terms of addressing it. And I'm not letting Urbana get away with it either. I don't necessarily attend to Urbana, but their achievement is just about the same. And if we don't, as a community, white, black, brown, address this and make our school board, our teachers, our administrators accountable for addressing this, we are going to lose, and we are losing, an entire generation. And I think it's really important. And the other piece is, at the university level, as we're make sure that our universities, particularly at the state universities, are addressing this in their training for our teachers and our administrators, because this is, in our current society, a priority that needs to be addressed.
That's my education co-chair, right there. So the NAACP knows. And I am able to do the work that I do today because of people like them. They make it easy for me, and I'm going to continue to work. If you are a member of the NAACP, just raise your hand. Raise your hand. Thank you so much for your service. Thank you so very much. And we invite other people to join if you see fit in the fight that we're working. We're not out there doing bullhorns or doing a lot of marching or any of that, but we are at the table where decisions are being made, and sometimes there's not enough of us, and I understand that it's kind of quiet out there right now, but our children are suffering. And so what I was trying to do in the article is to make sure that teachers and school boards know what they need to do, whatever they need to do, whether it be extra time directed to curriculum building or resources for teachers, whatever it takes, they need to provide that. And I also suggested to the school district that it would be very nice if they would find the money and the time to hire some of the parents who are unemployed to work in the school district, in the schools, doing whatever they're qualified to do, to pay them to be there, which would most likely improve the discipline of their children. If they know my mom is here, my dad is here, my uncle is here, my grandmother is here, whatever it takes, hire some of those parents and educate them and help them to be in the schools where their kids are and get paid at the same time.
Thank you very much. I'm James Gilbert. I work with First Followers in the community, and I wanted to, I know you've talked quite a lot about these structural inequities, structural racism, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the connection between that and the kinds of community violence that we're seeing and what kind of steps could be taken to address that issue, which I think really needs to be at least highlighted a bit at the university, because I think it doesn't quite touch a lot of the population here, how serious this is in Champaign.
It all ties together. It all ties together. It's systemic racism. We are living within a structure in this country that was never meant for us, people who look like me, to benefit or to achieve. Oh yes, some of us get through that glass ceiling, and then they'll point to those and say, look, Oprah Winfrey did it, so-and-so did it, and it keeps us working. But we were never meant to have 100% equal quality. It wasn't, we were not. And whatever little we have, we had to fight for it. Would you like to speak to that real quick? Would you like to speak to it? Would you?
You know, that's a great question. The reason that it's a great question is because this thing with gun violence is, I think, has kind of caught us off guard. What we're really addressing at this point is the spike in gun violence. Gun violence has been with us for the last 40 years. Ever since we started this Get Tough on Crime, this whole business of who are we going to arrest to demonstrate that we're being tough on crime has been just one underneath the layer. You pull it away and you find out who we're going to arrest. This thing about gun violence, of course, it affects our community, the African American community, the most. But you know, a lot of things that have happened that change our community in a way that it leaves kids with a whole lot less to do. When I was a kid, you could deliver a paper. You deliver it early in the morning, you deliver it late at night, And that was a job. You could get paid for it. You could cut lawns. You can't cut lawns now to save your life. It's a major industry. Kids not going to run around with a lawnmower. African Americans, about the home ownership for African Americans is almost half that of white folks. Almost employment. Whenever we look at employment, you can guarantee that African Americans are going to be twice the level of unemployment than whites. And when they do have a job, they get paid 70% less than what white folks do. What does that mean? It means that they have less money to deal with the problems of just living. And some of those problems involve our children. Now, I've asked this, and I've not been able to get a really good answer. Where the heck are these young kids getting these very expensive weapons? Where did they come from? Are they just lying on the street somewhere, or somebody giving them out? And don't tell me that it's because they're stolen weapons.
No.
Look, when you have them dispersed throughout the community like this, there's something else happening. And the bumper sticker that only guns kill, guns don't kill people, people kill guns. That's a bumper sticker. That's not a truism. People with guns kill people. And one thing to do is to get those guns out of the community. If you think that because we're down, 125 police officers, and if we had more police officers on the street that we would solve this problem, you're dead wrong. Because the police are only good in doing this after the event happens. And so this structural stuff that we have that allows African Americans to be lower on all of these indicators finds its way through in different fashions. And one of them is this gun violence. And we also know that if you do things here, a 1% change in the amount of mortgages that are given out reduces violence by 9%.
Mm-hmm. True.
Let's talk about the things that can happen in the community. Cleaning up vacant, this makes no sense to me, but cleaning up vacant lots reduces violence in the community. Those aren't police officers. But those are just a few things I think that are related to the structuralness of how it keeps this stuff going. It takes our kids out of the community, it puts them in prisons, and then what happens to them when they come back?
Can I add one other thing? There's the school to prison pipeline. And essentially, I've worked with the Georgetown School of the Georgetown Law Center for Poverty and Inequity, and they have studied the disparity in student discipline in schools and how we put African American children, in particular, both boys and girls, on an early pipeline to prison by criminalizing some of their behavior that occurs in school. By the kind of referrals that are given to them. They have done a study where they asked participants' opinion about certain behaviors for African American girls. It's called the Adultification of Girls. They are losing their childhood because African American girls and boys in school are expected to exhibit adult behaviors, and they are treated that way. And that's an early structural reason why we're putting these kids in the juvenile justice system too early without addressing the needs that they have as young people.
And as you know, we cannot arrest ourselves out of this situation. It's going to take a paradigm shift to get together and address what ails our cities and our towns and our country. And to go back to the guns, there is no way that these young people are getting these guns on their own. I'm not crazy. Somebody making big bucks are providing these children with guns. And do you know how much ammunition costs? You can't even go out to Rural King hardly and buy anything like that, so I've heard, because I don't have one. But somebody is providing it, and as my dad would have said, and I believe it, this is another way for the KKK. They don't have to come and kill us. Let's have them kill themselves.
Okay. I don't know how long it's going on, but I have one more comment. I agree with the first speaker, I can't remember your name, when the Champaign or whatever the school district always tries to push in the furniture around, never really address the cause of this inequality in education, achievement, and academic achievement. And then I just want to add another thing. Another thing they do is always asking for increase the property tax for the district. And I don't think those two ways can really address the fundamental cause of the inequality of education in our school district. And I know when my kids were born here, grew up here, went to school, all the school educations in here, and I have been through all those things you are talking about. I know that in the school, there are a lot of unfunded mandates from the state government, and there are a lot of inequalities. And when you go to teacher-parents conference, there are parents never show up. If you are not interested in your own kids, your own education, who will? Okay, so, I don't think you have an answer. I don't think you comment. Thank you.
Would you like to, because I didn't hear half of, it's my fault, I didn't understand everything you said. Would you want to address that, please? Dr. Suggs Mason?
I said I agree with you about the school district, the way solution around the furniture, but not necessarily address the fundamental cause of the inequality in education.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yes. Yes. This is my other education chair, Dr. Jocelyn Landon Brown.
The other issue addressing that the gentleman raised, I think that, and related, is that the root cause. We have to look at what the root causes are, and I think that's kind of like the bottom line of what a lot of people have been saying. How can you have a good educational system without having kids who are hungry, kids who are homeless, kids who are dealing with other things? And I understand, I went to the school board meeting this past week, and what I'm concerned about is that I know that the teachers want to strike, everybody needs a good work-life balance, and at the same time, we care about these children who are not performing. And I don't understand why, I do understand, but I think there's some things that can be discussed and arranged so that people who are teachers, who are parents, who have to pick up kids, they have to work around that, or maybe there are teams, or maybe they can have teacher aides. I'm not sure they've explored everything, but I do think that extra 15 to 30 minutes for those students who need it, and teachers are getting paid for that. That's part of my concern too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I just want to, no, go ahead.
I just want to acknowledge the fact that we are over time and that there's probably still more to talk about. Minnie and Thom are happy to stay longer and to visit with folks, but I know that some people do need to go, and you don't feel awkward in doing that. We acknowledge we're over time. If you want to visit afterwards, you're more than welcome to do so. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This has been so good today.